Chapter 35, The Morning Sword and the Fallen Star. The Tower of Joy, 283 AC, Arthur stood beside the bed, gazing at the girl who lay there. Her strength and will had drained away over the past few weeks. Nothing, he said, had made a difference, nothing had offered her comfort. Even the thought of the baby growing inside her couldn't soothe her once the news from the capital reached them. She had recovered as best she could from the events at the Trident, as had he, but the news from the capital had shaken her to her core. How could they, Arthur? The children, how could they do that to the babe, to Rhaenys, to Elia? They're monsters, Arthur. Monsters. She cried out, and he couldn't help but agree. Lyanna opened her eyes and managed a weak smile. It was nearly time. Willa had already brought in the pails of water, and he had helped cut the cloth. The child would be here soon, but even the joy of that news brought a tear to his eye when he thought of it. It remained unspoken between them, but they both understood that, barring a miracle, Lyanna would not survive the birth. Her only wish was to see her son and ensure he would be safe. She looked up at him, her fierce spirit still shining in her eyes, even if her body had grown frail. If he comes, Arthur, promise me you won't kill him. Please, I need you to swear it. Lya, I must protect the babe. He'd never hurt the babe, Arthur. He's my brother. He, Benjen, and the babe, they're all that remains. Promise me. I beg of you, promise me. I promise, if I'm able, Lya. Your word, Arthur. Give me your word. You have it, my queen. He left the room when he heard the horses approaching. Making his way down the stairs, he joined his brothers, watching as the 7 horsemen rode toward them. He nodded to Gerald and Oswell, all of them ready to do their duty. This time, perhaps the last time, they would stand together once more. No words were spoken, none could fully convey what they felt. Instead of dwelling on what they meant to each other, they focused on the fight ahead. Arthur gazed out as the horses approached, spotting Stark leading the charge, accompanied by a young man he didn't recognize. When he caught sight of the small crannogman, he sighed. This man had been a friend to Lyanna, and Arthur hadn't wanted to face him here. He closed his eyes, knowing that if it came to it, he might have to kill him, but he hoped there might be another way. As the men dismounted, Ned Stark stepped forward, sword drawn, and began to speak. I looked for you on the Trident, he said. We were not there, Gerald replied. Woe to the usurper if we had been, Oswell added. When King's Landing fell, Ser Jaime slew your king with a golden sword. I wondered where you'd been, Ned continued. Far away, Gerald said. Or Ares would still sit on the Iron Throne, and our false brother would burn in 7 hells. I came down on Storm's End to lift the siege, and the lords Tyrell and Redwyne dipped their banners. All their knights bent the knee to pledge us fealty. I was certain you'd be among them. Our knees do not bend so easily, Arthur said, locking eyes with Ned. Ser Willem Darry has fled to Dragonstone with your queen and Prince Viserys. I thought you might have sailed with him. Ser Willem is a good man and true, Oswell said. But not of the King's Guard. The King's Guard does not flee, Gerald countered. Not then, and not now, Arthur said as he picked up his helm. We swore a vow, Gerald reminded him. As he donned his helm, Arthur watched the men line up behind Ned. He nodded one last time to his brothers as he took hold of Dawn. Now it begins, he said, moving toward Ned. No, now it ends, Ned replied. Starfall, 2 moons later. Arthur stood before an entrance known only to those of House Dane. His wound had healed, though it still ached, but he pressed on through the caves and up the long path. Arthur climbed the stairs to the locked door, removing the key from around his neck before stepping inside. It took him a few moments to navigate through the quietest corridors, avoiding the guards, until he reached his brother's room, only to find it empty. He moved on to Ashara's chamber and heard the soft coos of a baby. He opened the door to find her sitting by the crib, lovingly gazing at the infant. When she spotted him, she gasped, and it took his gentle touch for her to realize he was real, not some ghost come to haunt her. The smile that lit up her face chased away all his aches. He had seen such joy only a handful of times in his life, having experienced it himself only twice. How? Ned said you fell. How? She asked, her fingers brushing against his face. The crannogman, Lyanna's friend, he saved me. Oh, Arthur. I thought, we all thought, it's so good to see you, brother. She hugged him tightly. And the babe? He inquired. His name was to be Arthur, Ashera replied, beaming. He looks healthy, Ash. He is. Oh, Arthur, had it not been for the babe, I don't know, you, Elia, the children. I just don't know. Tears began to flow down her cheeks. I'm here, Ash. It's fine. I'm here, he reassured her, holding her close. They sat together for an hour before sending for their brother. When he entered the room and saw Arthur, he nearly collapsed but quickly composed himself and embraced him tightly. He immediately restricted access to the family wing, allowing only the most trusted servants inside. After washing and checking his wound, Arthur enjoyed the first proper hot meal he'd had in moons. That night, he slept in what used to be his old bed, knowing that tomorrow he would make plans to leave. When he woke and dressed, he broke his fast before meeting Illyria for the first time. The little girl was a mirror of Ashera, and he couldn't help but smile, though he introduced himself as a family friend. She reminded him so much of Rhaenys that tears welled in his eyes, something she noticed immediately. Arthur wiped away his concerns with a smile that warmed his heart. As he entered Ulrich's solar, he was taken aback to see Ashera there with the baby. However, the expression on her face was anything but pleased. You're leaving, aren't you? Ashera said, her tone accusatory. I am. My presence here puts our house in danger, and besides, I made a promise, he replied. Promised? Ulrich asked, intrigued. The man who saved me and I made a deal. I promised to leave for now. He saved my life, and I gave him my oath. There's more to it than that. You don't care that much for your life, you'd never just give up, Ashera insisted. Arthur smiled at her words. Oh, who said anything about giving up? By the end of the day, they had reached an agreement, he would leave for Braavos. The family had an account in the Iron Bank that he could access, and he had some coin of his own stored there as well. The only real argument arose when Ashera declared she was coming with him. He tried to reason with her, but she was determined. A few days later, the ship arrived to take them to Sunspear and then on to Braavos. Once settled in Braavos, Arthur found it surprisingly easy to adapt. Although he and Ashera weren't wealthy, they had enough coin to live comfortably. He knew his brother would keep them updated on events back home, and he awaited the crannogman's letters with anticipation. What surprised him most upon arrival was learning that Ser Willem had come with the Targaryen children. Arthur considered reaching out to help where he could, but news soon reached him that Riella might have crowned the boy king, a situation he could not abide. He was already serving a king and had no intention of serving another. So, he kept his distance from Ser Willem and the children, at least publicly. Privately, he took on the role of a guardian, watching from afar. The first assassins that came never even made it to the house. He dispatched them the night he spotted them lurking in a back alley behind a tavern. After explaining everything to Ashera, Arthur spent the next few nights in a rented room overlooking the house where the children stayed. With the assassins gone, he found that his presence wasn't urgently needed, but it did give him the chance to see the boy. What he observed convinced him that the child could never be king, he was his father's son in every way, and nothing anyone did would change that. So, you finished watching them, then? Ashera asked as she set his meal on the table in front of him. No, I'll check in and make sure they're safe, but they should be fine. I'll keep an eye out for anyone who would harm them. Good. Now eat up, I need to change Cregan. That's a stupid name, he remarked with a smirk. It's a northern name, Ashera replied. Yeah, that's what I said. A stupid name. He ducked just in time to avoid a damp cloth she playfully tossed at him. Bravos, 4 years later. Arthur thought life had been pretty dull and boring as he watched young Cregan practice with his sword. If anyone had told him this would be how he spent his days, he would have laughed. Yet, he enjoyed playing with his nephew, and though the boy was still young, he had begun to teach him a little. Ashera had settled well into Braavosi life. She worked as a tutor for some of the wealthier residents' children, which brought in some extra coin. Meanwhile, Arthur took on odd jobs around the docks to stay informed about any developments. This work allowed him to keep in touch with Howland, who sent letters every few moons, sharing that the king was doing well, happy, and safe. It also helped him ensure the children remained safe. Over the years, the usurper hadn't stopped sending assassins, and how he knew where the children were was beyond Arthur. It still surprised him that he hadn't sent a larger force to deal with the problem. The old lion must be losing his touch or completely out of the loop, Arthur thought. If he had been the one sending the assassins, he would have expected to see the mountain or one of his other dogs of war by now. Just the thought of that monster made his blood boil. That night, Arthur contemplated taking a ship to hunt down Clegane. The man deserved to die, and Arthur would have gladly been the one to deliver that fatal blow. However, he had sworn an oath, and unlike his former brothers, his words still held meaning. "Uncle, come practice," Cregan called out as he approached with his little wooden sword. "All right, nephew. Let's do this," Arthur replied with a smile. The next few minutes were spent in mock sparring. Arthur didn't focus solely on teaching, instead, he allowed the fundamentals to slip into Cregan's play. He showed him how to move his feet and hold his sword, but mostly, it was about having fun. The boy's laughter brought Arthur a bittersweet mix of joy and sadness. He cherished the time spent with his nephew but worried about who was teaching his future king. After a few moments of sparring, Cregan caught him on the leg, bursting into laughter at his success. "I got you. I won." Cregan giggled. "That you did, nephew," Arthur acknowledged. "Sparring again, Arthur, really?" Ashera said as she walked into the garden. "Mama!" the little boy exclaimed, running to her. "I won, Mama. I won." "Of course you did, my little star." "Come give Mama a big hug," Ashera replied, embracing him. Arthur put the swords away and followed his sister and nephew inside. He had work to do that night, he knew those men would make their move, and he needed to be ready. Sitting down at the table, he laughed and joked with Ashera and Cregan before heading to his room for a short nap. As usual, he wouldn't sleep for long. Standing in the corner of the square, he waited. Over the years, he had lost count of the men he had killed in this place, but they kept coming. Had he been in charge of the children's welfare, he would have moved them long ago. Yet, when he glimpsed the little princess and saw how happy she was, he understood Willem's reluctance to leave. The prince was, as Arthur feared, a source of concern. Arthur saw the turmoil in the boy's eyes and resolved that if Cregan ever harmed his sister or if the madness grew worse, he would take action. For now, he found solace in the shadows, his friends, his companions, his brothers. Though they could never replace those he had lost, they offered a far better example of brotherhood than those who remained. Barristan bending the knee, Jaime slaying his king and failing to protect his princess and her children, yes, he would choose the shadows over false brothers any day. As he watched the three men move into the square, all thoughts of betrayal faded away. He had work to do. Bravos, 290 AC. Ashera had ignored her fever for days, hoping it would simply fade away. There were no maesters nearby, but there were healers, and they had the coin to pay. Yet, it was only at Arthur's insistence that she allowed them access. Cregan tried to be brave, but seeing his mother sick frightened him. Each time she moaned or coughed, Arthur could see the tears threatening to spill from his eyes. Arthur felt blessed by the seven. Without him, Ashera had no idea what she would have done or what would happen to Cregan if the worst came to pass. "How is she?" Arthur asked the Red Priestess, worry etched on his face. "She is as well as she can be. I have done what I can," the woman replied softly. "What does that mean? Will my sister be all right?" Arthur's anger was palpable now. "Arthur, please," Ashera said, reaching for his hand. She watched as he slowly calmed down, though his expression remained anxious. She turned her gaze to the Red Priestess, who stood with an almost bored look on her face. "I have done what I can. It's up to Rulaller now. If he wills it, then your sister shall be fine. But if you wish to be certain, I can look to the flames." "Do so," Arthur said, taking her hand. The priestess left the room, glancing back at Ashera. This sickness had ravaged her. Most who suffered from a fever never recovered, but those who did sought the help of the Red Priests and Priestesses. Ashera had never been interested in that route. It wasn't that she didn't value her life, rather, she had been raised in the light of the seven. To turn to false gods now would only anger her own. It was Arthur who insisted she seek help. For his sake, and for Cregan's, she had relented. Her son needed his mother. "Arthur, should I not?" "No, you'll be fine, Ash. You'll be fine. I know, but should I not? The letter, will you give it to him? Will you tell him the truth? Please, Arthur, despite your own feelings, promise me." She watched as her brother's head snapped toward her at her last words. "Ash, please don't make me promise. I beg of you." Arthur's voice was soft, almost pleading. "I need you to, brother. I need to know he'll know the truth, know his father's name." He nodded, and a sense of relief washed over her. Should the worst happen, Cregan would be all right. Later that night, Ashera fell into a deep sleep. The heat that had enveloped her body began to dissipate, and for the first time in days, she felt relief. She could breathe a little easier now, her chest moving more freely. The aches in her limbs had vanished. Suddenly, she found herself in a small glade with a nearby pool, the sound of splashes echoing around her. Ahead stood a large tree offering shade. She moved toward it, feeling an inexplicable pull. "Finally. I thought you'd never get here. Come, Ash, the children wish to see you." No, it couldn't be. She blinked and opened her eyes again. It was her friend. Elia stood before her, looking more beautiful than ever, glowing with health. When she smiled, Ashera felt her heart contract. "Elia, my princess, is it truly you?" she asked, stepping closer. "It is, Ash. Now come, Rhaegar, Lyanna, and the children are waiting for you." "I'm so glad to see you," Elia said, a welcoming smile lighting up her face. Am I dead?" "Oh no, nothing of the sort." "Come," Elia replied, holding out her hand. It felt like almost a week later when Ashera finally woke up. The fever had broken, and she felt better than she had in a long time. When Arthur saw her eyes open, he began to cry. She coughed, and he quickly moved to pour her some water. "Ash, we thought," Arthur said, a broad smile spreading across his face. "Cregan, where is my son, Arthur?" she asked, her heart racing. "I'll get him for you." "How do you feel, Ash?" "I'm good, Arthur. More than good." Her little boy didn't wait to be called. As soon as he saw her awake, he ran to the bed and hugged her tightly. Ashera shook her head at the worried expression on her brother's face. When he realized she was fine, he nodded in relief. "Mama, were you dreaming?" "Uncle Artie said you were dreaming," Cregan asked, looking up at her with wide eyes. "I was, little one. It was a good dream. How have you been? Were you good for your uncle? I was, Mama. I did everything I was told. I even ate my vegetables because they make you grow strong, right, Uncle? It is true, Arthur said, grinning. He was a great help to me. Ashera smiled as Cregan looked up at her brother with adoration. Where is the priestess, Arthur? She asked, suddenly concerned. I sent her away, Ash. She was talking nonsense, she couldn't help. But she did, Arthur. We need to find her. He simply nodded. Over the next few days, Ashera felt her strength returning, though it shocked her to discover that what had felt like a week was actually closer to a month. Even that realization faded when she learned that Arthur hadn't left the house since she had fallen ill. That worry settled heavily in her chest. The children, were they safe? Had her illness caused even more pain to the family they served? She sent Arthur to find the truth, and when he returned, her worst fears were confirmed. The children were gone, the house ransacked. At least it was They're gone, Ash. No sign of them. Willem has passed. I questioned the servant who said the children fled. They robbed them once their protector died, Arthur said, his shame evident in his voice. It's not your fault, brother. We'll find them. It's not your fault, she replied softly, relieved to see Arthur nod in agreement. They searched for a week, but the children were still missing. However, they did manage to find the priestess, who confirmed what Elia had told Ashera. Their path was now clear, whatever happened next would unfold in Volantis. They sent a letter back to Ulrich to make new arrangements and gathered some gold along with their account details from the Iron Bank. Within days, they were ready to travel. As she stood with Cregan, Ashera smiled at the fond memories they would carry with them, memories of the house in Bravos that had been their home for so long. The journey to Volantis in 291 AC had been long and difficult. The Red Priestess and some of her acolytes accompanied them, much to Arthur's initial annoyance. However, over time, he had come to welcome their presence. Cregan loved traveling by ship. The sights of the sea and the creatures that dwelled within it fascinated the young boy. At one point, as they sailed past Tyrosh and the surrounding islands, he caught sight of the outline of Dorne. That's where you were born, Cregan, Ashera said, pointing at the sandy shores in the distance. Really, Mama? You and Uncle Artie too? Yes, us too, my little star, she replied, ruffling the boy's dark hair. Will we visit, Mama? One day, my son. We'll go back there one day, I promise. When they finally arrived in Volantis, they were greeted by another Red Priestess, this one even younger than the one who had accompanied them. Despite her youth, the deference she received indicated that she was of much greater importance. Welcome to Volantis, Ser Arthur, Lady Ashera. I am Kinvara, and the Lord of Light has prepared for your arrival, the woman said, her smile radiant. Prepared for our arrival? Arthur replied, eyeing Kinvara and the other priestess with suspicion. Indeed. We have secured you a place to live, Ser Arthur, as is Rulalares' will. He glanced at Ashera, who nodded, and they followed the Red Priestess through the bustling city. Volantis was impressive, he had to admit, but as he observed the people and the tattoos marking their faces, he felt a wave of discomfort. Slavery was a grim reality in Essos, and while he couldn't change it, that didn't lessen its abhorrence in his eyes. As they walked, Arthur noticed Kinvara stealing glances at him more than once. He was about to voice a thought when they arrived at a modest manse and were led inside. The view might not compare to their home in Bravos, but the house itself was larger and better furnished, reflecting their more comfortable lifestyle in the port city. To his surprise, several servants awaited them, all dressed in the light red of the acolytes of the Red God. He opened his mouth to protest the need for servants, but a glance from Ashera silenced him. Just then, Kinvara interrupted his thoughts. I have some news from your homeland, Ser, if you and Lady Ashera would care to join me, she said, gesturing toward some seats in the garden. "We would be delighted to hear about our home, Lady Kinvara," Ashera replied, and Arthur simply nodded in agreement. "Can I see my room, Mama?" "I'm tired," Cregan said, stifling a yawn. "Of course, my love," Ashera answered, before Kinvara signaled one of the girls to lead them inside. As they settled in the garden, Arthur felt Kinvara's eyes on him, her smile still bright with curiosity. "You do not believe, Sir Arthur?" the priestess asked. "I do not, my lady," he replied honestly. "One day, you will," she said, her expression unreadable. "I know the truth, but for now, would it be enough to say we serve the same purpose?" "Really, my lady? And what purpose is that?" he scoffed. "To see his chosen sit on his rightful throne, to see the dragons once more rule the skies," Kinvara replied, causing him to swallow nervously. "What do you know of dragons, my lady?" he asked, raising his voice. "Would you look into the flames with me, Sir Arthur? Would you seek the truth? I have no time for parlor games, my lady. When you change your mind, Sir, come visit the temple. I'll help you find the answers you seek," Kinvara said, her smile growing even brighter. Before he could respond, Ash returned. "My lady, I thank you for these accommodations," his sister said courteously. "The Lord is who deserves thanks, not I," Kinvara replied. Arthur grimaced again. He had seen zealots before and knew these followers of the Red God to be among the most devoted. What he couldn't understand was his sister's comfort with it. When she had woken and fully recovered, she insisted he find the Red Priestess. He had been stunned when it was revealed they would be leaving. The fact that Kinvara seemed not only in agreement but almost giddy about it raised his hackles, especially seeing his sister converse with her numerous times since. "You said you had news from Westeros?" Arthur asked, eager to see this woman gone as soon as possible. "We did. It seems the Krakens decided to rebel and found themselves crushed by the lions, stags, and wolves," Kinvara said, noticing the twitch in Ashera at the mention of wolves. "They were defeated," Arthur said, sighing. "Yes, though there were losses on both sides. The Kraken lost his children, and the lions their patriarch." He looked Kinvara carefully in the eye, searching for deceit. When he was sure she was being honest, he began to laugh, surprising Ashera with the volume of his amusement. "Arthur?" Ashera asked, looking at him questioningly. "Tywin, Ash, Tywin Lannister is dead," Arthur said, laughing again before turning to Kinvara. "How?" "He was killed by a reaver, or so the tale goes. I don't have more details yet." "I thank you, Lady Kinvara, for both the news and your warm welcome," Arthur replied, genuinely smiling at her. After the Red Priestess and her followers departed, he checked the house and found his room. Peeking in on Cregan, he felt a surge of happiness to see the boy sound asleep. As he made his way to the small kitchen, he discovered Ashera had prepared some food. Sitting down at the table, he began to eat, grateful to fill his stomach before the conversation that awaited them. When he agreed to come here, Ashera had shared very little with him, promising to explain everything once they arrived. He had planned to wait until they were settled, but the presence of the Red Priestess had shifted his resolve. "Why are we here, Ash?" he asked. "It's where we're supposed to be, Arthur." "I don't understand." "I saw them, Arthur. Elia, the children, Rhaegar, and Lyanna. I saw them all." "What?" "When I was ill, I saw them. I spoke to them. They told me we needed to come here, that this was where we were meant to be." "Why?" "I don't know, Arthur, but the Red Priests have a role in this. Kinvara has a part to play. So that's why you were so friendly with them?" "Of course." "Why?" "Oh, Arthur," she said, laughing. "Well, thank the Seven for that," he chuckled, joining in her laughter. In Volantis, life had settled into a routine. They would send letters to Ulrich and receive replies, with the Red Priests happily delivering them. Cregan studied with her in the mornings and practiced with Arthur whenever he could. Her son had grown significantly, both in size and skill, and he was on his way to becoming a fine swordsman one day. Not that she wished for a life of wielding a sword for him, but with Arthur as an uncle, she knew it was inevitable that the boy would be drawn to it. Her son was her greatest joy. Ashera felt a mix of joy and deep regret. She was proud of Cregan, grateful to have him in her life, but it troubled her that he was growing more like his father every day, and that he knew nothing of him. In Bravos, she had easily found work as a tutor. The old blood, upon discovering her identity, were thrilled to have a friend of the dragons teaching their children and paid generously for the privilege. However, her dreams had been erratic. When she spoke to Kinvara about them, the priestess revealed that her ruler had shown her in the flames that Ashera had a role to play, that she and her brother would help the Lord's chosen. Kinvara had taken her deep into the great temple and led her to an unlit brazier. As Ashera watched, Kinvara approached it and spoke words in a language she didn't understand, though she suspected it was a dialect of Valyrian. In moments, the brazier ignited, and Kinvara beckoned her closer. Ashera felt compelled to move, as if it were her destiny. "Look into the flames, Lady Ashera. The answers you seek are there," Kinvara urged. At first, Ashera saw nothing. Then, a wall of ice emerged, along with a white wolf and a small, pale dragon. She watched as the dragon grew larger before vanishing. Suddenly, she saw a battlefield filled with men, only to have them engulfed in shadow. A dragon flew overhead, its skin whiter than the moon, its wings as blue as the sky. On its back sat a man, and as he passed over the army, they charged forward. "What did you see, my lady?" Kinvara asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "I saw a white dragon with blue wings. A man rode upon it, and an army followed behind," Ashera gasped. "The Lord's chosen, Azor Ahai, the white wolf, the dragon reborn," Kinvara said, her voice filled with awe. "I don't know how can I see this?" Ashera stammered, shaking her head in disbelief. "It is the Lord's will, my lady," Kinvara replied. That night, Ashera lay in bed, her mind racing, and sleep eluded her. When the vision returned, Ashera found herself back in the glade with the pool. This time, however, there was no sign of Elia, Rhaegar, or Lyanna. Aegon was gone too. Instead, sitting alone with her legs dangling in the water was a girl of 12. Her long dark hair and tan skin revealed her Dornish heritage, but it was the girl's sad smile that made Ashera's heart skip a beat. "Rhaenys? Auntie Ash, I thought you'd never come." "No one comes here anymore," the girl said, her voice tinged with sadness. "I'm so sorry, princess. I didn't know how." "It's all right, Auntie. I missed you." Rhaenys jumped up to hug her tightly. "I missed you too, princess. I missed you so much." Ashera struggled to hold back her tears. "Don't cry, Auntie." "I won't, my sweet girl." "Why won't he talk to me anymore?" Rhaenys asked, her voice wavering. "Who, princess?" "Jay. He won't speak to me. He never speaks to me now." I don't know, princess." "Do you speak to your brother?" "I did. We did. He even held my hand. But now he won't talk to me, and mother and Egg are gone. Mother Lyanna and father too. I'm all alone here. I don't like being alone. I don't want to. I don't want to remember." Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. Ashera reached out to comfort the girl, wanting to hold her tight. But as she did, Rhaenys began to fade away. Ashera expected to see concern on the princess's face, but was surprised to find joy instead. "Rhaenys!" she shouted as the girl disappeared. Awakening from the vision, Ashera wiped her eyes, realizing she had cried during the night. She cleaned herself up and got dressed, trying to shake the memory of the girl she had cradled as a babe from her thoughts. When she walked into the room, she found Cregan already sitting down, breaking his fast. She smiled at him and allowed Kara to bring her a meal. "Good morning, mother," her son said with a smile. She returned his smile, watching him grow more each day. Soon, her little boy would be a man. "Good morning, my little star. Are you ready for your lessons?" "I am, mother." "Will Uncle Artie be back today?" "I don't know, son." "I hope so." Volantis, 293 AC, Arthur had been on the road for a long time. Ever since Ashera had convinced him that it was Rhaegar's will for them to come here, he had embraced the journey. His relationship with the Red Priestess was complicated. He didn't fully understand her or their religion, but he did trust her. For reasons known only to them, whether it was their god's plan or something else, Kinvara wanted to see Jaehaerys on the throne, and that was something he could support. What frustrated him, however, was the lack of information about the king. Both the priests and Howland Reed had been vague. All they could tell him was that the king was well, but nothing more. He had considered sending a letter to his brother for more details, but if it were intercepted, it could endanger the king's life. So, he had reluctantly accepted the uncertainty, though his patience was wearing thin. His other concern had been the children, and this was a point of constant disagreement with the priestess. According to Kinvara, they were not part of his path, and seeking them out would only put the king in danger. Arthur vehemently disagreed, but the priestess remained firm. She refused to help him find the children, leaving him with no means to search for them. Still, he tried. During his time away from Volantis, he investigated but found no trace of them. They were gone, and he felt powerless to help. Most of his time had been spent on errands for the priestess, retrieving items she claimed the king would need: a book from Mantries, a chest from Coriane, some stones from Kohor. It was the last item he now carried that surprised him the most: Valyrian steel ingots he had discovered in old guys. How the priestess knew of them, he could only guess. The flames of fate were mysterious, indeed. Arthur had seen enough to convince him that some things were beyond this world. "I expected you sooner, Ser Arthur," Kinvara said, her voice steady. "I hadn't expected to be here at all, my lady," he replied. "Rulaller willed it, Ser. It is time, the flames await." Arthur shook his head as he entered the temple, thoughts swirling in his mind. He carried the chest inside and found Kinvara waiting for him, as always. While he knew his return to the city wasn't something he chose to hide, word likely filtered back to the priestess. He understood that was not how she knew he was back. She smiled at him, a light radiating from her that hinted at something significant having changed. "My lady?" he asked, curious. "Come, Ser. There is much we must discuss." He followed her down the corridor, the chest still in his hands, until they reached the room with the brazier. There, another priestess stood, gazing into the flames, her red hair reflecting eerily in the shadows. Kinvara gestured for him to place the chest on the ground and approach the fire. As he did, the other woman smiled and stepped back, allowing him to peer deep into the flames. In the flickering light, he saw a lion standing protectively before a wolf, growling at anyone who dared approach. The wolf grew larger, its white fur thick and its red eyes locking onto his violet ones. It sniffed him, then licked his hand. He saw himself, his white cloak billowing in the wind, raising dawn as he stood beside the wolf. Before them, an army charged forward, and the wolf smiled, transforming right before his eyes. He knelt on one knee as a white dragon took flight, soaring toward the advancing army. Flames engulfed them, and the dragon returned, landing gracefully beside him. He closed his eyes, and the wolf came back to his side. When he turned to face the two priestesses, he could see the reverence in their eyes, the devotion they held for what they had witnessed. "It is time, Ser Arthur. The dragon is reborn. It is time to make your move." "Return," Kinvara said. "I swore an oath, my lady." There is nothing I wish for more than to serve my king, but I swore an oath. I am not the only one who sees what needs to be done, Sir Arthur. Soon, the old god's servant will send for you. If you leave now, you'll catch the letter before it's sent onward. My lady? Melisandre will join you on your return home, Sir Arthur. It is in the place where the stars fell that you will receive the news you've been waiting for. I bid you good fortune in the wars to come, Sir. Kinvara said as she turned and left. Dorne, 294 AC, Arthur stood on deck as the ship sailed through the sunset sea, the Torrentine looming before them. Beside him were Ashera and Cregan, and he could feel his sister's excitement from where he stood. His full beard itched, but it helped to disguise him, just as his hair did. Ashara's hair was dyed blonde, but it didn't suit her. Her dark skin was far more in tune with her natural color. Even after more than 10 years since they last stood on these shores, and despite the fading memories of the rebellion, the threat remained. If the usurper learned of their survival, their lives, and their families' lives, would be in danger. Below deck, Lady Melisandre sat with her 2 guards and the items he had procured. His king would need them. That was all she had said when he pressed her for more information. He found Melisandre to be a different sort than Kinvara, more serious in some respects, yet more devoted to Jaehaerys in others. He shuddered involuntarily when she referred to Jay as the prince that was promised. The look on her face troubled him. Devotion was a good thing, but blind devotion was something entirely different. He realized he had hidden behind his oaths to the king, blindly devoted to them when they needed to be questioned. With Rhaegar, it was different, and so it would be with Jaehaerys. He would serve, and he would give his life if necessary, but he would seek clarity in his purpose. Arthur pondered the king's true worth before he fully committed himself to the young ruler. "Is that Starfall, mother?" Cregan asked as the castle came into view. "It is, my son." "We are finally home," Ashera replied, wiping a tear from her eye. When they arrived at the castle, Arthur considered sneaking in, but since Ashera would be staying for a while, it made more sense to enter as guests. He handed a guard a note to send to his brother, and they waited in the courtyard. When the guard returned, he led them inside to Ulrich's solar. There, they found Ulrich sitting with their sister, Illyria, who was now 12, just a babe when they left. Ulrich jumped up and embraced his sister and then Arthur, his face lighting up as he turned to Cregan. "Ally, this is your sister and brother, Arthur and Ashera, and your nephew, Cregan," Ulrich said, beaming. Illyria gasped. "But I thought," everyone said. Her voice trailed off as tears filled her eyes. Ashera rushed to her side, pulling her into a warm embrace. "I'm so sorry, sister. We had to go, it wasn't safe for us." "I'm so sorry. You're my uncle too, like Artie is?" Cregan asked, looking up at Ulrich. "I am, lad. It's good to finally meet you. Ally, can you show Cregan to his room? We can all talk later. Introduce him to Ned too, would you?" Ulrich suggested. Ashera gasped. "Edric, my son." "Everyone calls him Ned for some strange reason," Ulrich explained, and Ash nodded in understanding. Arthur leaned down to give Illyria a hug, whispering, "We'll talk later, little sister." She nodded in response. "Ally, just tell them Cregan is a friend of the family for now. We'll sort it out later," Arthur instructed. "Of course, father." "Sister, it's truly good to see you." "You too, brother." "Cregan, let me show you your room, and maybe we can explore the castle if you'd like." Illyria offered, her excitement evident. Her smile struck him deep in the heart, so reminiscent of Ash's. "I'd love to, Aunt," Cregan said, and Arthur couldn't help but smirk. The boy was already settling in well. As they sat down, Ulrich explained that Melisandre and her guards had been given quarters. He reached into his desk and pulled out a letter he'd been waiting to share. "I just received this from our friend in the neck. Had you arrived tomorrow, It would have already been on its way to you, he said, handing it to Arthur. Arthur took the letter and read it aloud. It is time to return, for your king has need of you. He smiled, feeling a sense of belonging wash over him. Finally, he was home. Finally, he could begin to correct the mistakes of the past. Finally, he would see the king he served.